The prairie stretched wide and endless beneath a sky painted with twilight fire, the kind of horizon that made even the strongest men feel small. And into that fading glow rode Colton Hayes, a cowboy whose boots had known more dust than comfort, whose heart carried more scars than memories of joy. And as he tethered his horse outside the ramshackle inn on the edge of the town of Dry Creek, he could hear faint music drifting from within, the sound of an old piano struggling to keep in tune with a singer's trembling voice. And when he stepped inside, the air heavy with tobacco smoke and spilled whiskey, his eyes fell on her, sitting in the corner near the stage, not singing but watching, her dark hair falling loose over her shoulders, her face etched with both beauty and weariness, the kind that comes from battles fought in silence. And though her dress was clean, it carried the frayed edges of hardship, and her eyes, wide and uncertain, darted away the moment they met his, as though she was ashamed of being truly seen. And Colton, who had lived long enough on the trail to know the look of a soul burdened with secrets, felt something stir inside him, something protective, something tender. And when the rowdy laughter of drunken men grew too loud near her table, he stepped forward, his shadow falling over them, and though no words were spoken, the mere weight of his presence made them shift back, muttering curses as they slunk away. And she looked up at him with a mixture of gratitude and fear, her lips parting to speak before faltering, until finally, in a voice that quivered like the flame of a candle about to go out, she said, "I'm not a virgin," and the words hung heavy in the smoky room, as if she had bared a wound no one had asked her to reveal. And Colton, steady and quiet, simply pulled out the empty chair beside her, sat down, and with a gentleness that did not belong to the hardened life of a cowboy, he reached for her hand, rough fingers brushing against hers, and he said in a low, steady tone, "I never asked you to be," and she froze, tears brimming in her eyes, because all her life she had been judged, measured, and discarded by men who thought purity was a crown she had lost. And yet here was a man who saw her not as ruined, not as less, but as whole, as worthy, as herself, and she whispered his name as if tasting it for the first time, Colton, and the night around them seemed to soften, the piano fading, the laughter dimming, until it felt as though only the two of them existed in that space, two broken souls stitched together by a single thread of compassion. And as the hours wore on, she told him her story, of how she had been taken young by men who did not ask, of how she had been forced to carry shame that was never hers, of how she had wandered from town to town seeking not redemption but simply a place where she could breathe without feeling the weight of judgment. And Colton listened, really listened, his eyes never leaving hers, his thumb tracing circles across her knuckles in quiet reassurance. And when she faltered, when her voice broke, he did not fill the silence with pity or empty promises. He simply held her hand tighter, the unspoken vow in his grip saying more than words ever could. And when at last her story spilled out like the last drop from a cracked canteen, she waited, bracing herself for the disgust, the rejection, the same look every man before had given her. But Colton only leaned closer, his voice steady as the earth itself. "Darlin', I've ridden with killers, gamblers, men who left their souls out on the trail, and I never once asked them to prove their worth to me. Why would I ask it of you?" And her breath hitched, because in that moment the chains around her heart loosened, the ones she had wrapped herself in for so long, and for the first time in years she felt not dirty, not ruined, but seen, wholly seen. And as the night deepened, they walked out beneath the stars, the town behind them fading into silence, and he lifted her onto his horse, settling behind her with his arms around her not in possession but in protection. And she leaned back into him, feeling the strength of his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and she realized that perhaps love was not about being untouched, unscarred, or perfect, but about finding someone who looked at your brokenness and called it beautiful, someone who never asked you to be anything but yourself. And under that vast western sky, as coyotes howled in the distance and the wind carried the scent of sagebrush, she whispered softly, "Thank you," and Colton, pressing a kiss to her hair, murmured back, "No need, darlin', you're enough." And though the world would never stop being cruel, though the trail ahead would always be hard, she knew from that night forward she would not ride it alone, because she had found a cowboy who did not care for illusions, who never asked her to be what she wasn't, only to let him walk beside her as she was, scars, stories, and all. And dear listener, if this story touched you, if it made you believe even for a moment that love in the harsh Wild West could be tender and true, then I ask you to subscribe to this channel, because every tale we share carries with it the grit of survival, the ache of longing, and the fire of redemption, and together we'll keep these stories alive, stories that remind us that no matter how broken we feel, we are still worthy of being loved exactly as we are.